Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining today's webinar on successful DevSecOps use cases for financial services. My name is Berkeley Baker. I work at JFrog on the field marketing team. I will be the moderator during this webinar. A couple of housekeeping tips. This webinar will be recorded. Please mute yourself to avoid any background noise. You can use chat for questions and comments that will be answered at the end of the webinar. I want to take a moment to introduce you to our speakers. Maharshi Patel is a senior solutions engineer at JFrog, focused on designing, developing, and delivering revenue growth and productivity increased applications. Cyrenne is a JFrog customer and works in the financial services industry with a successful track record leading organizational transformation and strategic problem-solving IT requirements. Take it away, Maharshi. And thank you.
Absolutely. Hey team, hey guys, I'm Maharshi Patel, a solution engineer at JFrog, and I located based out of California, San Jose. With over 14 years of experience, I have worked as a software engineer at prominent enterprise establishments such as IBM, Cisco, and today we are honored to have JP, a distinguished tech lead, joining us as a special guest. JP, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good day, everyone. I'm Jean-Pierre Cyrenne, JP for short. Take away this French encryption here. I live in Montreal, Canada. I've been in the telecommunications, web, entertainment, events, streaming, and banking industries over the years. My last 23 years have been in IT, mostly on the ops side of things, in a now agile DevOps culture, working with GitOps pipelines, the cloud, and the tools that support different development teams. I'm not getting younger, but definitely wiser with the white hair to prove it. If you guys want to know a bit more about me or reach out to me, you can check out my LinkedIn profile. We could probably paste it here if somebody wants it or is interested. With all this said, thank you for having me here. I'm excited to get started.
Absolutely. Let's do it. So JP, let's start with what is the standard software development lifecycle process typically followed by the financial industries today?
In a simple way, the goal, as we all know, remains to produce more quality code and faster. The classic SDLC phases don't change. We code, we build, we test, we deploy, we monitor, we repeat. More than that, with planning, analysis, operating phases, some tools help us achieve all this, right? So a typical SDLC scenario will be for a developer to create the code, commit to SCM, a Git system, let it be Bitbucket, GitHub, GitLab, Git, and then have a hook or trigger to automatically pull the dependencies, build the code, validate the quality of the code, run tests, and push it to an artifact manager. Artifactory, obviously. The packages or containers should then be checked for vulnerabilities and license compliance. Like I said, then repeat. It's an ongoing cycle, infinite loop, right? Code and builds are promoted from development to staging to QA to production with PRs, pull requests in the SCM. Typically, code and build should not change. No rebuilds from one environment to another. Configurations or parameters should be passed to the build. A typical CD scenario would be to use a tool to deploy this build from a specific branch to its environment, say staging. All of these steps usually make a pipeline. You can have a pipeline to build, one to deploy, or one that does it both. Everything should be as code, so you can keep versioning and avoid human errors. It's roughly, on a high level.
Makes sense. So as we discuss various phases here in SDLC process, it definitely evident that different technologies comes into a picture, as well as different stakeholders, dev, QA, ops, has different tasks throughout these phases, right? And this collaborate approach to kind of make sure that the successful delivery of a software. right? In context of absolutely financial institutions here, right? So with that, what are the typical challenges that financial industries or organizations are facing as of today?
In my experience with the banking industry, there are obviously security challenge. Everything is curated and needs to be compliant. There's also the load on the application and the amount of data that needs to be stored or accessed. We can't ignore scalability, HA, DR, all very important. An example on the upside could be, say you have 800 developers with an extra 10,000 service accounts. Usually you don't configure stuff per developer. We'll use the service accounts for specific rights, either to read, to write, or whatever needs to be done on a precise action. We say maybe close to 5 repos, different products and projects, big database, and close to 80 terabytes of storage. Mostly blobs in the end because of containerization today. So just an example of let's say a more scenario that I lived or understood. We chose Artifactory as artifact manager because of issues we were starting to face. We could not continue with a competitor's product that wouldn't scale or age well with us. Artifactory helped us with faster user management through the API. We had latency with the original solution. Deleting accounts were causing issues in our API calls. We also have tools that call APIs. So we're getting very slow. We're getting timeouts. Artifactory helped us with an HA scalable solution on Kubernetes, EKS in our case. We were limited to a single vertical node or had to write our own logic to try and use 2 servers only on the same subnet with the old tool. So that helped us a lot. We benefited from almost practically limitless storage with S3, cheaper than EFS. We'll talk about this if we want later, but we're close to 80 gig limits of EBS. EFS was not guaranteed to be fast enough, and I believe it wasn't really an option with the older solution. So S3 is almost limitless and cheap and was a good solution for us. It offered a DR solution thanks to the federated repos, like another branch in another region. Mirroring cloud data is way easier than syncing it. Think about storage, database, everything. It just gets done behind the scenes with the product itself, with JFrog. Licensing was cheaper, and the savings could be put towards the resources we needed. Obviously, costs and say compute went up, but we now have like I say, an HADR solid solution. Big machines cost a bit of money, but overall, great solution. And like I say, you pay for what you need. You might be twice as big as that and need twice as much resources. You can be smaller, start with a really small cluster. It's very, very flexible for us as a client.
Absolutely, absolutely, indeed. And this is where exactly right. Like for example, federated repository you bring up. I think those are the kind of really good features that that we release as part of a JFrog platform. But apart from that, as you mentioned, some of the challenges are regulatory compliance, data security, and privacy. Cyber threat is also one of a kind of a newly trended. It's been there, but in recently we've seen this grow significantly higher, right? And scalability, performance, and as well as operational resiliency are some of the challenges that we see not just with financial, but with also other industries as well. Now, as we discussed about a little bit on the security side, right? What we've seen, just to kind of go over some of the analysis and research, right? Like those cyber attacks grew by 500% in last 2 or 3 years, right? And this is where 80% of the CIOs kind of feels like their software supply chain is actually vulnerable, right? So with that, JP, if you would like to kind of go over how the financial industries are ensuring the security of their software supply chains as of now.
The DevSecOps culture accelerated development and security by addressing challenges developers face, right? We wait for security sometimes to approve. There's quality gates, say the approval of requests, passing of builds to QA or ops for development. A lot of time is saved between the time the code is written to the time it's released with automation and tools like Artifactory and X-Ray. Obviously, this is not all on JFrog. It can depend on how busy your security department is and how fast your PRs, pull requests are approved and merged. So it's a company culture also. You can go fast, but if someone takes a day or two to approve and merge a PR, it's another problem. But the tools are there to help us go and work fast and securely with Artifactory and X-Ray. It's easy today to add source code validation and scan builds or containers in pipelines. As an example here, it was a requirement that the solution be hosted internally. We're a bank, an extremely secured VPC with practically no access to the internet. It's just normal for the examples you just gave before. Everybody would like to get their hands on your account or whatever is in there. All dependencies needed to come through the artifact managers to be validated. I call it a proxy in a JFrog world language. It's virtual repos, right? So developers are to get their dependencies for multiple technologies only from one source. When I talk about that, I talk about, I don't know, Maven packages, Gradle, Go, Python. It just can't be pulled from the repos we know well on the internet. Even infrastructure as code now with Terraform, templates, and Helm charts can be managed this way. JFrog Curation helps improve DevSecOps a lot. It can stop vulnerable packages before it enters the software builds from the get-go. Builds need to be scanned and uploaded to an artifact manager. We talk about that. We want to have one area where everything is verified, and access needs to be provided to security for governance reasons. So if a developer pulls code, it has to be transparent, and that's part of DevOps itself, right? So with JFrog, everything is all in one place and easily accessible to get the information we need for the whole company builds. So Artifactory would become the single source of truth for artifacts as Git would be to code. Like I mentioned, Artifactory brings it all in one place with virtual repositories and X-Ray. You're now sure that everything that comes in the company and deployed has been scanned and can be looked at by multiple people. Today, a developer can also use a CLI in a local dev environment or in a pipeline to scan the build and even fail it if needed. It can also be inserted in IDEs or check the JFrog GUI and get the proposed fixes. Developers have the flexibility to fix an issue right away. So I think it's probably part of the shift left culture, but we are all working as a team here, and whatever we can help the developer, it doesn't have to wait or see, it's all there. So that was very, very helpful and good tool to use, if I might say. It's also a single place where security and governments can look for vulnerabilities, reporting, SBOM, the software bill of materials. You want to know like all the software your company is using to help you respond quickly to security, license, and operational risks that come with open source.
Yeah, that's absolutely. This is what I'm glad that kind of it helped your organizations, JP, right? So this is where organizations normally kind of comes and say, hey, we would like to kind of standardize the processes, software development processes, right? And this way, by standardizing, we want to help our security team with a kind of a clear understanding of what are those open source packages within our ecosystem, right? And how they are being utilized by by the proprietary artifacts, right, or proprietary code bases that we write or teams write it, how they are using them, right? And this is where this standardization process kind of enables better visibility in the components, right? And being used, which is more like a crucial for maintaining security, compliance, identify them, and kind of manage effectively, right? Absolutely. So with that, in what ways did JFrog platform assist in addressing these challenges, some of the challenges that you mentioned before, as part of your SDLC process?
Like I mentioned in the previous question, JFrog has helped us in many ways with dev, sec, and ops. So other tools also integrate well with JFrog. How JFrog has helped us mostly is on the development side by using a single point to pull dependencies, store builds, and scan them. Have an inventory on it, get recommendation on what needs to be fixed. It helped us on the upside by providing an enterprise scalable solution, including a latency issue we had, a storage limit we were coming to with a single EBS. If you work with Amazon in the cloud, there are limits to block storage. It's a platform that will grow well with our needs, I'm convinced. So it helped us on the security side with the virtual repos, proxy to external repos, scanning of packages and binaries, and provided a single point to analyze everything, vulnerability, licensing. It's accessible, like I said, to everybody, dev, ops, and security, or whoever, needs to see it. What's really good also is I really appreciate the advanced security. It's an amazing feature. With the scanning of containers, almost everything is going to containers today, right? So it's building the artifact, they're being scanned. It looks for passwords left behind or secrets inside the code. It checks infrastructure as code, Terraform modules, checks for insecure usage of binaries, which here it helps to focus on fixing the real CVE issues, those critical red ones, not false positives. If I can elaborate, as we all know, OSS contains vulnerabilities, and we often have to no choice. The important thing is to know if it is actually exploited or used. This may leave close to 20% as real issues to concentrate on. It's a huge amount of time saved by only remediating vulnerabilities that are applicable, and gives a certain reassurance about the other 80% of CVEs. When you look at all the vulnerabilities, you could take a step back and say, oof, what are we going to do? Like I say, this helps us concentrate on the real problems, and some vulnerabilities, whether it's even on the operating system layer or whatever, probably nothing to do. But you got to also make sure that you're not exploiting that presence of something wrong in there. I don't know if it makes sense and the way I described it. Yeah.
No, absolutely, it did, and exactly you mentioned, right? Like as part of today's world, we all focus on, hey, how we can improve our code and release faster to our end customer or end users, right? And with that, we need to be very cautious about the processes are automated, right? REST APIs are being used by integrations, or CLI being used by developers, or IDE plugins in one example, right? So this is where, when we talk about integrations, this can be one team uses 5 tools versus the other team uses 10 different tools. And this is where the universal integration supports that has to be provided by a platform becomes a kind of a game changer in many ways. So in regards to when we talk about teams here, JP, would you be kind of elaborate a little bit more on how the team structure and where were they kind of distributed in different part of the world?
Yeah, I can't divulge all the financial secrets, but for us, the teams of developers were all local. We're Canadian branch bank, located mostly, I guess, in the eastern part. Um, so everything's local. What we did use, or what I call the office branches option in another region for DR purposes, with the use of federated repos option. In a nutshell, everything that was created or changed in Montreal was then replicated to a faraway region. That's how we would manage our DR. This functionality is granular and can be applied to the repositories you want. This kind of replication is very good. You can't start syncing, mirroring really, terabytes of packages and builds when an event occurs. It's just too late. You have to be, you're down. You can't do it. It has to already be there and ready. So that's how we more or less use the branches design to our advantage.
Correct. Right. Exactly. Right. And this is where all the SLAs or RTO, RPO commitment that we do have it for internal stakeholders like a developer experience was have an end customer kind of comes into a picture altogether. So with that, we talk about development sides. You mentioned about the builds, right? So can you provide some of the insights? What is the frequency of builds, concurrent builds, that we are running or considering that industries are generating greater number of binaries due to architectural modernizations that happens over the last couple of years?
I don't have the exact numbers, but since I was owning and supporting this tool, I have a good idea. We had roughly 50 to 100 pipelines running at the same time throughout the day. So it's an evening, but one would end, another one would start, quite a few during the night also. There's nightly builds, often big ones. So for different reasons, longer jobs would probably run during the night, not to bother the day's work. So whether it was for CI or CD, it was affecting the artifacts manager. With all that activity, we cannot afford to be down and send 800 devs home. So it's just not an option.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And so that's on the dev side. On the CD side, you brought up a very good point, right? Because now we kind of move into more like a Kubernetes or containerization setup, right? And this is where the scalability comes into a picture. We would like to make sure that the scalability part of our DNAs, right? Or solution or the process that we have as part of our DNAs, right? So what are the deployments or how we kind of keep up with the load that is serving these binaries into a production with Artifactory?
I believe the load came more from the constant new builds throughout the day. People, we mentioned it before. It's a cycle. You fix, you code, you build, you monitor, repeat, and it's an ongoing thing for dev and staging. Production deployments are more calculated and often scheduled. You need a window with specific time for different products, as one product can affect many other products. So Artifactory kept up with the extra demands. So like I say, the bigger load for me is probably during the day. You have all these people working, they're building, they're pushing, they're pulling, and it helped us by staying stable. And if we were to need it, we can grow easily. Just purchase another license and add a server.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, given the ongoing nature of this builds and deployments, JP, after kind of, let's say, integrating this JFrog platform into your ecosystem or SDLC processes, what are the immediate issues that your team has seen are addressed immediately, right? And in addition to that, if you can share some of the feedback that you received from your team on the implementation side, will be definitely helpful here.
Yes. Immediately, we resolved our ops issue, HA and storage. DR was another step according to our planning, but what really was a problem was the storage. We weren't able to be highly available and scale. We were more on a vertical solution. Not that it was bad, it did last for a long time, it served us well, but like I mentioned, it just wasn't growing with our needs as we were growing bigger and bigger and needing more and more, I guess, resources, let it be compute, storage, and whatever. So, like I mentioned, we didn't come from nothing. We had a solution in place. DR, like I mentioned, was a special use case. A lot of data that has to be synced and available almost immediately. It has to be done ahead of time or before the crisis. Just imagine a big issue with a data center or your VPC. A corporate call is made, routes are switched to another region. Your customer, internal in our case, any product or owner or service we have, they may have an SLA of 1 hour to fix their own issues. So you can't just start a cluster, transfer data on a database. We're taking about a lot of data here. We're talking terabytes, like I mentioned, to serve your internal clients. So you already have blown their SLA before they even start. So things need to be up and running minimally, at least in synced, mirrored, and in a better term, in almost real time. Then all that's needed to do is to scale for more demand if necessary. That's fast and efficient at a factory. Let's not forget we would be in a disaster emergency mode. So a plan, priorities, they have to be established ahead of time because it might not be 800 people can hit on it at the same time. We're going to have to deal with, maybe what's a bit more urgent. So you asked before, like the team's feedback was very good. I mean, everybody likes Artifactory and many have used it in the past. So it's not like you're always introducing something new. Everybody have to learn. Developers, bright people, they have experience. They've seen and used things, and often they have used Artifactory. So it's a great product, not hard to sell to developers. Quick note here: in a big enterprise environment, you do have to plan for some internal support from a few SREs to help internal teams. If you're going to migrate from another tool, it's not much more difficult than changing your URL in a pipeline to go from one tool to another. But some teams can be very small, not even have a developer anymore. Yes, old builds, binaries with technical debt. Everyone has their skeleton in their closet. This exercise also helped us find these lost projects and remediate them. So just to let you know that what I mean here is, if you're migrating from a tool to another, there will be a bit of work that has to be done. And we, slowly but surely we move ahead with two better products.
Absolutely, and that's a really good feedback, JP. Thanks for the feedback there. And absolutely, I'm with you, right? Like for example, having it one setup where we kind of throw more and more resources, and we kind of do vertical scaling. By doing that, it's not helping us with avoiding a single point of failure situations, right? And this is where I'm glad that Artifactory come into a picture where kind of allow us to do more like a horizontal scale within same region, multiple AZs, and having this federated repository, federating those terabytes of data into a different regions, help us, as I said, like terabytes of data, we take snapshot. By the time we are in disaster mode, if we go and provision this, it's not gonna definitely help with our commitments of our SLAs to stakeholders, right? And that's where we are more like leaning towards. At enterprise level, we are more leaning towards having it more like a hard DR setup where things are already up and running, data is already migrated there, and in situations like disaster, we just change the DNS and we are back up and live while we are investigating what happened in our current setup and make it available or back it up. And we also need to make sure while we do that, those delta data that we push into this disaster recovery zone will be also come back to our primary region because that's our primary setup. So that's really good feedback there, JP. with that, could you please provide some of the insights into your collaboration experience with the JFrog team, both during the initial onboarding process and as you moved into subsequent stages, how JFrog team kind of helped you?
First of all, the support we got from the JFrog team was awesome. My team and I were kind of new to Kubernetes and Helm charts. We are talking 3 years ago. I don't think many people have been doing this for 10 years, right? But it was a breeze to implement with RDS, S3, solid managed solutions. That's what you're looking for. The support team helped us mainly with the starting configurations and overrides, right? So you're launching a Helm chart, you got to know where to plug your database, where to plug your storage, test, make sure it works well. They were there a lot for us. As an Enterprise Plus customer, we had regular technical meetings and access to a support specialist to debug, troubleshoot any challenges we had. A lot of our challenges had to do with migrating from a tool to another. That's probably why I took time 2 minutes before to mention it. You have to plan for that. You have to, pull your sleeves up and get the job done. So our sales representative was always present to bridge any gap that could occur. It was a great experience for us with the JFrog team. To move to JFrog has been beneficial for us in every aspect of the DevSecOps culture and support. Companies are not seeing software as an expense anymore, right? But more like an asset with a value. So JFrog helps us version and secure our software. It helps us collaborate, save time with security, developers, different teams. With all due respect, it's cost effective and grows well with us. Licensing was cheaper. Obviously, you're growing a cluster, you're adding costs, but it's an option to use the resources you need to get the job done. So when it wasn't like a blockage or a wall where you're on one vertical node, you took the biggest one, good luck. So that's about it.
Absolutely.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where I think eventually, as we've seen the modernizations of a software happen, right? We start producing more and more binaries. So this is where I'm glad to hear that kind of a JFrog kind of keep up with how you grow, your organizations grow, it keep up with the load that we are putting through JFrog platform. With that, for attendees on that call today, JP, I would like to kind of share this JFrog platform. For some, it's probably new. So let me share my screen and kind of present what is comes as a part of a JFrog platform here, right? We talked about Artifactory a lot, right? And this is where, as of today, Artifactory supports 32 package types, and this is where, coming from application development sites, Python, Go, NPM, Java, Cargo, Terraform. Those are the packages that we can store inside Artifactory as of today. And this is where X-Ray comes in, where they both work as a natively together. So any request going in and out of Artifactory, we can have X-Ray looking at those requests, and based on our security team's policy decision, we can say if a critical has been identified, as you mentioned, JP, fail a build or block downloads, right? And if we want to have integrations with third-party tools where we like to trigger some workflows, like let's say we want to have ServiceNow case open or Jira ticket created, or even in AWS Security Hub, we would like to have this as an incident. We can definitely distribute or have those events going through those tools, and let security team also use those information as well. And this is exactly, you touch upon JFrog Advanced Security, where kind of a contextual analysis piece, which is rather we share a source code with security tools. Here is our binary, And how contextual analysis help us is looking inside those binaries and telling us, okay, this is a false positive, or those kind of reducing the noise from our scan list. It's a significant value when we are talking about build secure software and release faster to the market. And this is where we also have a distributions where we are not only talking about having these binaries running in one data center, right? We are talking about having across multiple regions. Some situations are more like a disaster recovery. So that approach, or many times we do have, as you mentioned, there are some environments where we want to ship these binaries securely, right? And they are running into some kind of a offline or air gap environment. Or we have teams in different regions and they would like to use those binaries for QA, or developer in another region has some kind of a dependencies from a different regions. This is where distribution comes into a picture, where how I can securely deliver those binaries close to those remote personas, right? And this is where edge nodes, which are read-only version of Artifactory, comes into a picture, which can run on a low latency network. So sometimes different regions has different requirements or limitations in network side, right? So this is where edge comes into very, very helpful there. We also do have a JFrog pipelines, which is a modern YAML-based CI/CD solutions. And many times, some of our enterprise clients, they do use pipelines as an orchestrating tool to trigger workflows. Also, we have signed pipeline where you can also make your pipelines immutable. So no one can tamper with your pipeline itself or promotion process itself, right? So you can use that. And many times, some of the customer has manufacturing plants, or they have automotive vehicles here, right? And this is where Connect comes into a picture, where we want to release this software that kind of go through this all checks and gates throughout this process and deliver over the air to those devices or those sites, right? And that's where JFrog Connect comes into a picture, where remotely I do device management as well as software upgrades to those devices. And all this kind of help us with the software supply chain security with an automation process. One of the other thing that we also kind of offer as a platform is called curation and catalog. And this is where, without having more like a reactive approach, curation becomes more like a proactive. So you can look all upstream repositories like Maven Center or Python or NPM like that, and stop if there are known issues like malicious packages, or there are packages has higher vulnerabilities, or even as you are familiar in regulatory, we do not want have any newer patch that just came out today have that being used by our developers, right? This is something we want to have it security look at that first, then it make it available to a developer, because it just came out. We don't know what's in it, what are the issues that it might bring up, stuff like that. And this is where the curation allow us to have those version of those packages kind of get mature enough. And this is where sometimes this curation process takes like 25 to 26 days in general. With the curation, with an automated process, we can kind of reduce that timeline to in just a couple of hours. So this is kind of an end-to-end JFrog platform that we have. Now let me stop here. And with that, with JP, if you have, with your approval, we can kind of begin the Q&A session.
For sure.
Perfect. Any question, team or folks that are on the call for either JP or for me here?
No questions.
There's a little thing I could add, if it's okay, 2 minutes from your last slides. A good distribution or edge example, because we're talking security and you know, accessibility of stuff. A good example could be, let's say you have a secure data center, cloud, you don't want the internet to access, but sometimes you're multi-cloud, right? You could be in, not to name the big three, but you know, you could be in Azure and you need to get some NuGet packages in. Roughly the use case that's nice is people work locally, put it into the local Artifactory instance, if we can call it, and then you can decide to sync securely, right? There's transport and everything that will bring it into another data center in Azure for what it is. So now your people are doing their CD, and instead of calling maybe a package, you know, once, 100, 1,000 times, it is also now like local thanks to the edge caching at the event. So just reminded me that while you were showing the slide, it's a very, very good product also to, you know, to keep things secure and accelerated. So you're not having a cloud coming into your restricted data center to ask for a package. You can deliver it in a nice sealed envelope to where it needs to be, and be used there locally, which is faster also, right? Latency and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is where it becomes more like a cloud agnostic approach, where you have, as you mentioned, right, any cloud provider, or you have your own data center where you want to do a data sync or make it more like a deliver of those binaries to the remote sites, right? And sometimes it might be some binaries goes to a customer facing, and this is where we don't want to open up our firewall to let them in. So this is where you put an edge into one of those cloud provider and let them download it. So this is where we are kind of having those traffic rather than we open up a firewall or kind of make those changes, let them pull it and let this all internal operational stay internal itself. So absolutely, and in that air gap situations where we have any binaries needs to be delivered, you can still kind of export, put it on the physical drive, because situations like closed data centers or nuclear plants where you want to kind of have those binary delivered, right? So you can carry those binaries in that manner on a physical drive and put it into that closed environment and let intranet devices pull it from the edge node and serve to the production workforce. So absolutely, that's a good feedback or good note, JP here.
Okay.
See, we have a question.
Yes, we do. Here, I'll read it to you. Does JP have any suggestions on better managing different applications or teams within the JFrog platform? Or has he primarily leveraged a sole system administrator to manage an environment for devs to work securely in?
Very good question. Life being the way it is with the number of developers I mentioned, is very, very hard for a human to manage. I mentioned earlier we work with APIs. We have an internal application, a system we built to manage. Like a new employee comes in, obviously there's a classic Active Directory, let's say, or Azure directory. Your account is made, you can log into your computer, but eventually when we're talking about all the different tools that could be used for development, that application was created. So we're lucky enough to have the developers, the time, I guess, budget and everything to develop such a tool. So the beauty of the tool is to be able to manage everything with an API and not by simply clicking, you know, add the JP, make him read writes or administrator, whatever it is. So as a sysadmin in the beginning, some had to be done manually. Eventually with time, beautiful application that helped us manage all that. So I guess any application that could use an API could most probably be integrated with JFrog. And that's what I explained a bit at the beginning, is we were doing so many API calls now that we were kind of choking the other older applications. So definitely automate what you can. Get in a little YAML file. You just change a name or a write, push it, get your PR approved, push it in, and your developer, your user should be set to go. So everything should be, Git versionable. Security should be able to see what's going on, who was added and why, and we're getting deeper in the specifics of the security, and not just banking. I guess any good company would tend to want to go towards these good practices too.
Absolutely, JP, right? Exactly, you mentioned, right? This is where when we kind of have this kind of information available, it becomes more easy for security side to kind of do traceability or kind of a auditability side as well, right? And who has the right access, right? And that's where one of the security side that we also see is an RBAC model, right? Role-based mechanism. A developer has a read and write on the product artifact. That's a little bit concerned for the security teams, right? So absolutely, that I totally agree with you, JP.
Okay, so we have a follow-up question for JP. In financial services, how close does development and InfoSec work together when utilizing a centralized software supply chain platform like JFrog, or is it still a fairly inefficient process?
Okay, I'm going to just read it again to be sure I understand it. The development and InfoSec work together. Roughly the security part. First of all, we're giving full vision, they can see what's going on with the software. We have reports of everything, so it's not an efficient thing. There is like some human stuff. Sometimes the complaints can be, well, we have governance, but is anybody looking at it? Which would be a bad thing, but we're just talking now. So InfoSec and devs work in a certain way where vulnerabilities are there, they're scanned, they're pre-scanned. We can see what's fixed or not. When you centralize software supply chain, it definitely helps. I wouldn't say it's inefficient. Can it be completed with different things, different tools? Obviously, what's good now with JFrog in the past year and a half, 2 years, and these guys can correct me if I'm wrong, the purchase of another company, we're getting better scans. We're not here to question or do anything, but the fact that now code can be checked and not just binaries is a good add, and showing that the JFrog team are going forward stuff. So yeah, we've heard of Snake, we've heard of Sonar Cube. Those are all products that can help us in, whether it's SAS, DAS, it's Veracode, different layers. But as we're going towards a more complete JFrog, I mean, you could launch a pipeline, build, store, scan, check the code. I mentioned earlier, there's tools for IDEs. We're helping the developers bring the best quality code upfront with the platform, so that the sec part of DevSecOps can have a look and work together. From there now, yes, there are rules that can be put in place. We can refuse packages. It's all a part of governance where I might not be an expert on, but working together, you want to know why something's been failed, and not get called as a sysadmin at 3 a.m. because suddenly I want to push a build and security decided we're not pushing it. There has to be a reason and stuff. So I think it helps work together in transparency and seeing what the code really is. I don't know if I answer your question well. You can go for a second attempt if I miss something. I'm sorry. But to say, I don't think it's an inefficient process. I mean, we all have to somehow be responsible, work together and improve things. And this is a tool for it, I believe. Good tool.
Yeah, just add on to that, JP, you kind of hit the topics there, right? And this is where, yes, these tools are there, which are more like a security focused, where where integrations becomes a little challenging, right? This is where we have 5 different tools talking to Artifactory, where who owns the binary? This is where Artifactory platform comes into picture, where you have all your assets, digital assets stored inside Artifactory, and putting a security on top of it, which kind of checks on each in and out request, kind of a sitting close to your asset management system here becomes super, super easy because it's one ecosystem. But in regards integration sides, there are options available, right? If you want to use it, absolutely, we can use multiple tools here, but that's one of the kind of hubs, which is one platform that we are working against versus 10 different.
And then Maharshi, we have one question for you. For the financial industry, with the InfoSec and Dev relationship, what does Maharshi see from the financial industry with the InfoSec and Dev relationship to secure the SSC?
Absolutely. So this is where kind of when we talk about the developer sides, right? Developer do take a security considerations when security team give them, hey, this is a report that you have it for your application and you need to fix it all. And you have a timeline this Friday, right? And this is where developer becomes in a panic. So we just talk about security side, but there is also a compliance picture in place, right? So with the JFrog X-Ray, what we platform offers, or what we seen within other financial customers as well, is we are kind of want a developer to become a security personas or experts eventually, right? To do that, what level of information we need to provide them? One, we need to do a risk assessment. For any vulnerability, we need to help developer understand, hey, if you don't act on this particular incident or issue that is in your application, what are the risks? It might end up into some kind of a DOS attack, or it might turn into someone gets hold to your servers, right? And kind of we compromised here, and that impact the business image, right? So risk analysis is one thing. And the second side, whether they wait for security team to provide them some kind of a solution, or they go over a Stack Overflow and search for, hey, how I'm going to fix this, right? What X-Ray does, it also gives them a snippet, code snippet, which is a secure, right? How they can actually remediate this particular issue. So this is where developer kind of start building a security muscle. Eventually, it's not going to happen over the night. This is a process, right? This is where if we empower a developer with this information, it becomes much more easier and reduce the friction that we've seen in the past, that developer has some timeline, tight timeline, and they ask for, hey, can you give me some more time? Can we release this product today, but I'll work on in future? Some friction that we have seen in the past with the security team and development team. So having X-Ray or JFrog platform kind of integrates in different phases like IDE, version control like Frogbot, or at the build pipeline level scanning, helps both teams here.
Okay. And then one more question for JP. Since we're just discussing the benefits of a platform approach from the system admin perspective, is it more efficient or well-liked to manage a single platform versus other vendors or many vendors? In your world, are there concerns with using a single tool versus many?
Okay, good question. Obviously, sometimes you sit down and you say, "Oh, are all our eggs in the same basket? Is that dangerous?" But if you look at it as a sysadmin or management, cost of ownership, whatever, more products means more trouble, more support, more licensing. You have to update more platforms. So having a good, solid platform, we are on Kubernetes, we're containerized, backed by a team of experts. As you can see, Maharshi explains stuff probably better than me at sometimes, but you feel that. So I would believe it's way more efficient. Instead of even for for the team and support, instead of knowing, 25% of 5 things, why don't you get to know one well, use its benefits, power, and stuff. So like I say, I see it as a benefit in my world, versus using different tools or something. Well, like I say, in my world, there's only JFrog. I mean, we talked about SCM. You got to have a Git, or let it be GitHub, Bitbucket. We talked about that. Now you're talking pipeline. You can have, let's say, in-house a tool to build, which is JFrog pipelines. No disrespect to pipelines. Some people may want to use GitHub Actions, Bitbucket pipes. These are even GitLab now. They all have their flavors of, I guess, CI/CD pipeline tools. So it's something that's built in, works well. When you stay proprietary, usually A works well, but B works well with C. When you go from, I don't know, Microsoft to Linux to, something else, sometimes you have to adapt and patch or do certain things. So now I see it as a benefit. All eggs in one basket. It's not like you have one machine and it dies and it's over. Like I say, we have the HADR redundancy. It helps us bring sync loads of data, database. I don't know if many vendors, I see how many other vendors we may have. Depends. Like it was mostly, we're decommissioning slowly on the SAS and DAST. Obviously, it wasn't available then. So, but maybe some pipelines or some department will need to keep certain tools for certain needs or uses. And usually we're there to provide help and not, we're going this way, too bad, so sad. Obviously, like I say, licensing and different stuff tend to explain why we're going a certain way. Better support, better service, better application, and cost of ownership. I mean, money is money for everybody or any industry right now, right?
That
Again,
is
I don't know. I hope I answered well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think JP, that's definitely. I think you covered that particularly very well. Now I do see, JP, we are at the time here, so I would like to express my gratitude for your investment in today's process, JP, and the folks on the call as well, and your experience in the financial industries and all the insights or challenges that you've seen. Share your experience and how JFrog helped overcome those challenges. Once again, thank you for your time and contribution, JP. With that, thank you so much, all the folks on the call. Bye for now, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.